Hey everyone, it's Chad. Before we start today's episode, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. You might have noticed that we've been a bit slow to release episodes lately. Lately, it's been hard to find the time to edit episodes, as unfortunately my family are navigating some new health concerns, and it's just a bit hard to navigate at the moment. This community and the listeners of this podcast truly mean a lot to me and to Steve as well. But my major priority every day is my family. And yeah, to my partner, Heidi, I love you so much. We can do hard things and we can do anything together. I love you. Okay. Thanks for listening. Here's our latest episode. It's a good one. It's a really fucking good one, actually. Take a listen. Thank you for tuning in to Give It To Me Bi. We are excited to keep our Bi Health Month series rolling with a look at something that affects all of us, physical health. Whether you've been following us from the start or just dropped by, we've got some cool stuff for you today.
You don't have to be a health fanatic or a research nerd to realize that Bi+ folks sometimes face extra hurdles. Maybe it's higher stress, health providers unfamiliar with Bi+ needs, not seeing ourselves in health conversations, or simply not having the support networks that we need. Today, we will talk about what those challenges look like, plus some real-world tips for feeling your best.
So sit back, grab your water bottle, Hydrolyte, iced latte, whatever keeps you going, and let's dive into physical wellness for Bi+ bodies. This is Give It To Me Bi, bringing you our Bi Health Month focus on physical health. This is Give It To Me Bi, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything from a Bi+ perspective. Now, let us give it to you Bi.
Give It To Me Bi acknowledges that we live and work on Gadigal land. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to elders past and present. Sovereignty was never ceded. Not sponsored by Hydrolyte this week.
Not sponsored by Hydrolyte, no.
Electrolytes, get your electrolytes.
Oh my gosh, I'm doing it.
And by the way, everyone, Steve has officially finished his cut. He has finished his bodybuilding prep. We are back into the real world. It's exciting. Nice. But it's funny, like the last couple of weeks, you start hyper-focusing on certain things and you actually like have to measure like your when, where, how much, your electrolytes you're taking in. There's like sodium management, there's water management. It's just like every little thing. So I'm a little bit triggered by the term electrolyte.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm having watermelon drink. This is what I'm having. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Chad.
How are you?
Good.
You know what I'm excited about this week, Steve? I get to see you 3 times. This is my Mardi Gras. This is my Pride season. Is I get to see you 3 times in a single week.
I feel so sorry for you.
And in 3 different contexts. Usually it's like, cool, we're catching up to do like a Bi+ podcast, something or other. But yeah. three different contexts. One personal, one podcast, and then one just general community social hangout.
Oh, I know. Okay, yeah. And we get to talk about all 3.
We do.
Actually, and our little bylights.
Bit of our bylights. Why don't you kick us off with one of them?
So Chadney and I have got to hang out a lot this week. We attended the state memorial for David Paulson AM, and David, or Polly, and I were close friends. He was one of my mentors. And an absolutely incredible HIV advocate, one of the first couple of 100 people diagnosed with HIV/AIDS in the early crisis, underwent dozens of HIV drug trials and other drug trials, and lived the most incredible life, and went on to influence so much of Australia's HIV response. and was also the founder of Qtopia Sydney, of which I am an ambassador of, and that is Australia's largest LGBTIQ plus cultural centre. He has just left the most incredible legacy, and I don't know about you, but like the memorial was,
it was so camp.
I was so
wonderful.
camp, and I cried a lot because I'm going to miss him, and not be able to talk to him and ask him for advice, or just have like a chin wag and a good old bitch session. Because
he seemed like the best person to have a chat with.
He had,
I got that cheeky vibe from him.
Just incredible, and I see so much of myself in him as well. And if I could ever achieve an eighth of what he did, then I'd be a very proud advocate.
It's pretty special. I didn't know Polly personally, and to be honest, I was pretty ignorant to Polly's work and experience until very recently, and I was so moved at the memorial. The first queer advocate to ever have a state memorial, which is one of the highest honors you could have in the state.
No, the highest honor.
Sorry, the highest. It's incredible.
I didn't realise every single flag in the state of New South Wales, including on top of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, was at half-mast for our Polly, for a queer person who passed away, and the entire state came out to acknowledge and appreciate and mourn his loss.
It was very special. Polly stage directed the whole thing because he thought he would potentially pass like for decades, right? This is 40 years on since his diagnosis, finding out that he had HIV, and so he's had a long time to think about what it was like. And so there was an opera singer singing tracks from La Traviata. There was a reading by our premier, Chris Minns of Wicked.
For our American listeners, that's the governor of the state, so we call them a premier. Got up on stage and recited Wicked.
Yeah, which was funny because I feel like everyone in the room kind of knows the cadence of For Good, and I don't think Chris does, and kind of just read it like it was just like a written paragraph, and so I could see a few heads going, "This feels funny," and then it ended with a tune from La Cage aux Folles, which is a beautiful queer musical, and I just got this I'm so inspired by people who are reluctant advocates, or people who are thrust into something they didn't ask for and take up that mantle anyway. Polly didn't ask to be an advocate. Polly didn't ask to be the face of a something, but nevertheless went, okay, I will fight, and I will fight forever for not just for myself, but for the community. That's why 28 drug trials he went through, and because of the medical advances, not just in HIV, but all across different realms. So our COVID response is improved by the work that Polly did. It's incredible, and so I always think like there's an advocate in all of us, and we'll talk about why we're at Qtopia in a second. But afterwards, I was able to go and see the exhibitions at Qtopia. And there was an exhibition that I stood there by myself and I fucking cried for 10 minutes. It was the day after we went to the State Memorial, and they've recreated the award at 17 South at the St. Vincent's Hospital. And there's a documentary with Polly talking about the experience and talking about the loss and the just the tragic nature of the HIV/AIDS epidemic throughout the 80s and 90s. And
they literally rebuilt his hospital room from when he was diagnosed. Yeah, so Ward 17 South was the HIV/AIDS ward, and
it was just
it's
so
chilling.
It's chilling is definitely the word. And in that documentary, I mean, I won't spoil the whole thing, but like they said that like at one point they had so many people crammed into these wards. There's 6 beds per ward, and at the time you were told, "Cool, you have HIV. Don't fucking tell anyone. Like do not because you could be assaulted, or you could lose your job, or you could like lose everything, right?" And so a lot of people's HIV status was a secret And then Polly said one of the really chilling things is one day he walked through and all these wards, 6 beds apiece, had someone he knew in it. And it's like, oh, I didn't know. And the chilling thing then is it was a bit of a death sentence. So Polly beat the odds, but for most people, they didn't. And so he walked through there, 30, 40 odd people, just were like, oh, I'm about to lose you all. And so I cried a lot. it was a bizarre sequence of events. You go to the State Memorial, then go to that, and then have the program from his memorial now sitting on the bedside. So if you get the chance, head to Qtopia and experience it for yourself.
I might say, some of that, the secrecy around HIV and one's HIV status is still very prevalent. I cannot tell you how many times either someone, because I'm very open about being a person living with HIV, how many times someone who I've known for years will disclose to me in privacy that they are also living with HIV. And I'm like, wow, I had no idea. They don't tell anyone. Sure. Or I'll turn up to a social event for people living with HIV run by one of our local organizations. And there's like all these people. I'm like, oh, I had no idea. And it's that same thing, like, oh, I didn't, you're here with us. I didn't know. Yeah. And it's actually it's quite nice to be able to form that connection because it's a shared experience. Yeah. But then it's also, disappointing in that we do still live in a world where people have to keep their HIV status.
Yeah, what secret. A mixed experience. I feel like there is a level of like, oh, we're at a point where like you can, and I know this is loaded, and forgive my clumsy language, you can reasonably live without having to share and having to disclose to people. Indeed. And it's not illegal. And it's not like all those things have been made the case for people who are positive. However, it is sad that there are still stigmas where people are potentially missing out on community and connection and peer support. But cool that there's also places to get those things now. So it's such a bizarre mixed bag of experiences. Yeah. People who live with HIV. Hinted at a moment ago, but we also saw each other yesterday at Qtopia Sydney. Do you want to do a little bit more of a explain of what Qtopia is? We've always touched on it a little bit, but maybe give us a little bit more in-depth idea.
Oh, everyone, I can't wait. You're all going to get so excited about this. And I'm not sure how much we can say, but we will say it.
I think we can talk about our thing, but maybe not their thing, if that makes sense.
Sure. That doesn't make sense, but I'm going to roll with it anyway.
Okay, cool.
Qtopia Sydney, which was founded by David Paulson in memory of Professor David Cooper, who was one of Australia's preeminent HIV doctors, scientists. It was founded, just over a year ago, and it is Australia's largest LGBTIQ plus cultural centre. So some people call it a museum, but there's actually a definition for a museum where you have to keep archives, and they don't keep archives. It is actually a place where archives will bring their stuff for display.
Sure.
And so there are lots of amazing exhibitions, and there are rotating exhibitions, and there'll be different exhibitions on different themes over time.
And Steve, can you maybe give us a history of the location?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I think that's so relevant to why it's so special.
Yeah, so Qtopia Sydney is located in Taylor Square here in Darlinghurst in Sydney, in the old Darlinghurst Police Station. And Darlinghurst Police Station, which was closed down a couple of decades ago, then became just some health department offices, really became not much. But back in the day, it is the exact same place where the arrested protesters at the very first Mardi Gras in 1978, that is where the protesters were taken and beaten and assaulted and kept unlawfully. And most of the original cells are still in there. And I'll tell you, Chad, one of my favorite exhibitions in there. So all the cells where they kept queer people after they were beaten just for marching down the street for their rights. The cells are still there, and there's one cell which is still locked. And you look through it, and there's a television screen showing scenes from the 1978 Mardi Gras. And on the screen is also playing the apology from New South Wales Police, apologising for the acts of queerphobia and assault on our community. and the uniform of the police commissioner is in that cell. So we have flipped the script. We've put the police in the cell of the queer museum. And I just think that's so canned.
Doing their
I don't
time.
think. And do you want to know the cool thing as well? The police commissioner came to the opening of Qtopia Sydney and had to see their uniform inside that cell.
Yeah.
And it takes credit to New South Wales Police Force in that sort of context, in that it would take a lot of pushing down your own ego to be able to look at that and appreciate the irony, appreciate it, and also to donate the uniform itself. It would have all been done in consultation.
Yeah, because there is a rightfully so contentious relationship between the queer community and the police force and
that
and
originates
local police
from those very cells where we were beaten.
And so I sympathize with everyone who has a contentious attitude towards the police. I am one of them. And there are attempts between our communities to olive branch each other and to move forward. And some of those things are really, 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 really worth our time. I flip between having the energy to do it, or not having the energy to do it, or to entertain it, or when and where to include. And I know that people listening to the podcast will be on both sides of that fence. I think like an apology goes a long way, and I have to believe, otherwise I will go into a massive depression, that people are able to change and that institutions are able to change. Institutions are much harder. This is where institutionalized and systematic issues come from, right? And there needs to be overhauls and things put in place to make that not just a tokenistic gesture. But I have to believe it's possible. It is not there, and it probably won't be there for a long time. But yes, this year at Mardi Gras, there was the presence of the police were not there. I think local police might have been, but the feds weren't there because there was petitions and requests for them to not attend and not march in uniform. Oh, so you can attend. You can attend as a citizen, but marching in the parade in a uniform under the banner of the Australian Federal Police, they were asked not to attend.
There was a vote amongst the membership of Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras as to whether or not police would be allowed to march, and they eventually were allowed to march. But yeah, it's an ongoing conversation. It's a conversation that's been going on for decades, and it's a very meaningful and important conversation.
So we were at Qtopia not to just look around, not just to look around the exhibitions and have a good time reliving our histories, but we were there for a very exciting project that we're working on with Qtopia. And that is, I think everyone would be excited about, is we are going to be doing a Give It To Me By podcast live show, our very first live show and recording in front of an audience. You're all invited. We're so bloody pumped. Like this is what we do. We are kind of people and entertainers, and we love the energy of a room, and we love being a bit cheeky. And
oh my God, I can't wait for the heckling.
Oh, Steve wants people to heckle. Like, babe, we've only got a certain amount of time.
They're like, we have 2 roving microphones. I'm like, I need 60 roving microphones. I want everyone.
Oh yeah, so everyone else is doing a podcast commenting on us. So we will be doing a live podcast show and recording that we'll do obviously in a live space, but then we'll upload it for everyone who can't attend, for folks overseas, all that kind of stuff. But we need you to come along because it's going to be fun and we want to sell it out. We want to have a great time. We are also, because we are ambitious and ridiculous and gluttons for punishment, we are going to expand this night into a big bi night out.
Big bi night.
We are going to host 2 events in one night. We're going to do a podcast live show. Then immediately following, we're going to do another event just like across the footpath, still at Qtopia. It's going to be like a social community. Potentially, we're thinking about maybe doing a panel discussion with some bi icons in the bi community. And that's going to be fun as well. So you get to learn, discuss, be informed, but then connect with people and create community together. That is so powerful to be in the same room together, but we are so fucking pumped. We're so excited.
And this is, of course, all part of Pride Fest, which is Sydney's premier LGBTIQ plus cultural event across the whole month of June, Pride Month. That's being hosted by Qtopia Sydney. we are kicking off the month. So we
are
are
kicking it
starting
off.
Pride Month
Yeah.
with the big bi night. Can't wait.
That was our one request. Is like, we want to kick off Pride. We want people to go into Pride knowing and experiencing and having understanding and empathy for our community, so that as they go about their business, that they've got those thoughts. The cool thing is that so all the other states, or most of the other states, have these cultural events. We've got Midsummer, we've got Melt. Sydney doesn't, or hasn't had one until last year. Qtopia ran their first Pride Fest. And this is what a lot of community have been asking for, is like, I want stuff outside of Mardi Gras. I want stuff throughout the year. I want stuff that doesn't involve getting my kid off. It doesn't involve alcohol, that I can just go to on a weeknight. I can just go to with my family. I can just go with like some good duties and just learn and experience and be involved.
On that note, for our event, my kit will be off and there will be alcohol. So there'll still be a vibe, but it has come as you are.
Yeah, and it's not, the event doesn't start at 2 a.m. This will be an evening, a big bi night out. It'll probably be from like say 6 for the podcast live show, and then the next event from about 8 or so. It's going to be a bloody blast. We will see you there. It's going to be awesome. I expect you to get in our email inbox or our DMs and say, give me a ticket link and I'll put you on a list, and we'll get you along. It's going to be awesome.
And just a final quick little bylight. This Sunday, it's absolutely incredible. Sydney FC are sponsoring a group of us local bisexuals to go along to A-League, which is Australia's top soccer league, football, to go and attend their Pride match. And just a huge shout out to David at Sydney FC, who has been organising that for us, who has just been so keen to get bisexuals involved in this. It's basically just been, what do you want? What do you need? And we're here. We're looking forward to collaborating further in that space, which is really amazing timing as well after our sports episode to hopefully be able to create some even bigger change within that space. So we're going to have a lovely little bisexual outing on Sunday evening and watch some soccer. I'm going to have no idea what's going on, but I'm just going to enjoy it's so much fun. I did it last year and it's so much fun. Go Spots.
I have one little news story that I read this week. Actually, this morning, a good friend of the podcast sent it through. And this is, everyone knows Queer Eye Netflix's show. And Karamo, one of the hosts of the show, who is kind of known as the really kind of zen, I have empathy for everyone kind of folks, there's been an article and a video published about Karamo's attitudes towards his son when his son came out as pansexual. And Karamo said, look, I did not react the way you think I would have reacted. My internalized homophobia jumped out as a father, and I denied him that. When he said on the phone, hey, Dad, I'm pansexual, I said, wait, no, you're not. And I hung up the phone. And it's like, ooh, this is like one of our guys. This is Karamo, one of our most visible queer media personalities.
Karamo's gay, correct?
Karamo's gay, yeah. The cool thing, though, so Karamo talks about what happened after that as well. And this is why I love talking about that people can change and people can self-reflect, is he recognized that the internalized homophobia jumped out at him and the experience of him coming out, all that kind of stuff, and how those mirrored each other. The quote I loved was, he said, because even though I'm a part of the LGBTQI community, we sometimes don't learn about every part of our own community. And this is what we are talking about all the time. I will not admit to know everything about the lesbian community. It's impossible for me to, and it's impossible for a single lesbian to, right? I don't know everything about the gay community. I don't know about everything about the straight community. And I love that here's a really visible queer personality admitting fault and wanting to do better and calling out why it happened, and then said, I'd never met anyone who's pansexual that he knows of. And I was afraid of what I didn't know. And then had an encouraging word to parents saying, before you react, if you have a trans child, a bisexual child, whatever it is, before you react, take a pause, and before you react, be educated. Sometimes people get stuck in their ignorance because they're afraid to find the knowledge, but through the knowledge comes empathy and understanding. That's so cool. I love seeing, it's kind of like the Dochi thing. I love seeing big, popular, loved personalities admitting fault or calling out a potential bad situation, using it as a learning experience or flipping the script and saying, yes, but here's what you can do and here's where we're going forward. It's, again, a good news story come out of something a bit shitty.
Yeah. And it's an attitude that is pervasive across broader society and within the LGBTIQ plus community. And I just really admire him for admitting faults and putting a face and a thought process to these sort of attitudes towards multigender attracted people, and to say like, oh, I need to do better. We need to do better. This is how I did it. And just major props.
So today we are talking about physical health. This is a part of our Bi Plus Health Awareness Month series. It's an interesting topic. There's so many different ways that we can talk about physical health. And the cool thing is we're kind of talking about quite a few different avenues and angles. But the cool thing is we can talk about it forever. And so we'll probably touch on this in the future and have different angles, different opinions. And I'm excited to rehash all of our podcast episodes from different perspectives with feedback from you, the audience.
Mm-hmm.
We know that as a community, one, queer people in general face higher rates of health distress, health disparities across the board as compared to our heterosexual siblings. And we are learning that the bisexual community have far higher rates of those disparities than our gay and lesbian siblings. So this is why physical health is an important topic to talk about. Steve, where do you want to start?
And it also goes off our conversation around mental health as well, because there are these broad, it's sort of like this umbrella concept in that it's so odd that this group of people, very diverse people, but being bi plus people, coincidentally experience these health inequities across the board. And we have to look at why that is. There are all these structural issues. And so we're going to look at those sorts of structural issues. We're going to look at what this means for us as a broad community, and not how our sexuality affects our health. It's how society treats us that as bisexuals that affects our health. And then we're also going to look at, because it's no fault of our own. It's no fault of the individual. And so we're going to look at what people can do as individuals to define what good health looks to them, how they can set goals for that, and how they can maintain that. Yeah. We've both been through physical health journeys across different realms, whether that's having poor physical health, disability, through to achieving some sort of an idea of what we think is good physical health. And so we'll be giving some of our own hints and tips, some of our own experiences, and then looking at it at that sort of broader macro level as well.
Yeah, great. There's a growing body of research talking about the physical health disparities. I'm going to kind of reference one particular study because it references a whole bunch of others. It's not explicitly a meta-analysis, but it references a lot of the other work that's out there. So this study is called The Physical Health Disparities Across Dimensions of Sexual Orientation, Race and Ethnicity, and Sex, Evidence for Increased Risk Among Bisexual Adults. Now, the cool thing about this is it's quite explicit. And it says, look, the evidence suggests that sexual minority individuals are at an increased risk for physical health conditions as compared to heterosexual individuals. And that individuals with bisexual identity, attractions, and or behavior were at increased risk for more physical health conditions than other sexual minority groups. This is really cool that they have isolated the different paradigms of sexuality. One of the challenges that they talk about in this study, one of the recommendations, is trying to do away with this unidimensional, this one-sided idea of what sexuality can be. And what they've suggested and what they've discovered is that bisexual individuals, regardless of the sexual orientation dimension that is examined, were at the highest risk for physical health conditions. So that is across all things like identity, I self-identify as bisexual. Attraction, I'm attracted, or behavior, I am participating in bisexual behaviors. And so interesting that all of those paradigms were at an increased rate than all other compared populations, and that health disparities varied between them as well. So it's not the same level of disparity between someone who has an identity of bisexual or a behavior of bisexual and attraction of bisexual, which is really interesting. We do ourselves a disservice and we obfuscate the realities of people when we do not dig into these more niche understandings of what sexuality can be. I mean, Steve, we've talked about why it's important for health research to differentiate between them. What have you seen with bisexual health? What's been your experience or your opinions on losing that unidimensional idea of bisexual?
So you're talking about like the AIB model, the attraction, identity, and behavior model. And so I love this model because it is a holistic and really inclusive model on bisexuality. But the thing is that this model is often used against us through people who try and deny bisexuality. There'll be purists outside of our community. I think within the bi+ community, we accept AIB as firm and accepted, and in the literature as well, AIB is very much accepted. But people, some people will say like, oh, if you are not behaviorally bisexual, you are not truly bisexual. And in that case, the people who only experience the attraction or identity and don't have the behavior, that means that they don't have those experiences, and then they don't face the same inequities, and therefore they don't deserve the same sort of level of support. And so what is really important here is it's almost in a way proving that the AIB model is not just relevant, but it is really robust within the way that we analyze how bisexual people are affected by different health issues.
And the cool thing is that the AIB model, it's not a bisexual model, right? It actually accounts for and is inclusive of gay, lesbian, heterosexual folks, even bi folks who don't fall under a bisexual classification, bunny ears, and this is going to be clumsy language, apologies, in some of those categories. So for myself, right, I identify as bisexual. I have bisexual attraction. However, I'm not a man that sleeps with men or men who sleeps with both men and women. I am in a monogamous relationship with a woman, and therefore I wouldn't fall under, at least because a lot of studies about the last 6, 12 months, whatever it might be, I would fall under, again, clumsy language, a heterosexual sexual experience. And so then this AIB model allows my experience to be counted across the board. And the opposite is true as well. There are straight folks who sleep across gender lines. There are also gay and lesbian folks who have attractions and behaviors across gender lines as well. And so this is actually a really inclusive model. And as we've seen here, the disparities between them are also evident as well. So it's not just about like, oh, cool, bis are having a bad time. It's about like, oh, people who have this experience versus this experience are factually different or have disparities. Therefore, why and how is it happening, and how and why can we do something about it?
And it's inclusive, not just in the warm and fuzzy way, which is what a lot of people will say when they hear the word inclusive. Like, oh, yeah, okay. Oh, the AIB model just makes bisexuals feel better about themselves. It's like, no. It's like, no. It's proof that bisexuality exists. It's proof that it exists in diverse ways. And it's proof that the very being of bisexual, whether it's through attraction, identity, or behavior, or a mix of all three, in fact, causes very similar outcomes. And that's brilliant science. Because that's something that I get a lot as well, especially when talking in sexual health. They'll say like, oh, yes, we accept that bisexuals exist, regardless, your attraction and your identity are really important. But what we really care about is the behavior. And I'm like, okay, in some ways that's, when we're talking about transmissible viruses, bacterial infections, those sorts of things, that sort of comes into play. But health is so much more than just physical action. It widens out to health education, but it widens out to health promotion. It also widens out to how we develop policy and how we see people within our community.
Totally.
And so when you take that really sort of rigid and cold and outdated idea around bisexuality, you're really letting a lot of people down. Sexuality changes, can change, of course, can be fluid, and is quite often fluid. But we live an entire lifetime. And so what we are doing right now and what we have done in the past is no indicator of what we might be doing in the future. And that's where I sort of come up against that behavioral sort of attitude, because it's like you need to set up strong foundations for individuals to look after their health and not just look at a snapshot in time.
Sexual health is one of the only examples where this kind of differentiation has happened because of the HIV and AIDS response, is that they had to kind of get really specific. Okay, it is men who sleep with men. That is not exclusively it, but that is where it kind of began to kind of build that research in those lines. But we're talking things like general physical health. So like there are stats here, like bisexual women are at increased risk for diabetes and hypertension relative to lesbian women. Bisexual men are at an increased rate for diabetes as relative to gay men. So this is physical health across the board. And one of the things that I found really interesting about this study is that they were really good to say all sexual minorities, regardless of whether their sexual minority status is based on identity, attraction, or behavior, experience chronic minority stress. So you could be a straight identifying man, right, with a bisexual behavior experience, and you are still experiencing chronic minority stress, which is really cool to explicitly call out. And
I freaking love that because so many people will tell me, and there are a lot of people out there, including scientists, including doctors, who will say, we just acknowledge those straight men as straight men. I feel like there's sort of an idea of we shouldn't have to worry about the straight men. And this goes to show that, in fact, many straight men who may be behaviorally bisexual, they experience minority stress. And so it is a bold statement to say that many straight men experience minority stress.
I found that so fascinating. And selfishly, maybe also things like, babe, you're experiencing the stress anyway. Just come out, come be bi with us, and get counted. I thought that was really interesting because the next part after that, they called that out, was the major mechanism theorized to underlie physical and mental health disparities affecting sexual minorities is that minority stress. And so for bisexual individuals, the increased risk is attributed to unique aspects of anti-bisexual stigma. So this includes the negative attitudes as well as stereotype-based bias, portrays bisexuality as illegitimate, unstable, paints bisexual folks as sexually irresponsible and promiscuous. And that would be true for folks who are either gay identifying, straight identifying, and have a bisexual attraction or a bisexual behavior. And like we've got plenty of folks, you mentioned a few times on the pod, that you've got a bunch of gay friends that come at you and say, oh yeah, I sleep with women, or I'm attracted to the girls. And it's cool to have this in a study clock to say, yeah, everyone is experiencing this stress because the mental hoops you got to jump through, and then like contend with and then experience the stigma around the conflict of your experience is tough. And those things exacerbate other physical health conditions. So you think about that, everything in our body is connected. And this is something I'm learning, reading lots, is that like, I've always been pretty naive about physical health, but it's so connected. If you're not good up here, everything down here isn't going to work, and vice versa. If something physically isn't typical in your body and is atypical, it will affect your brain and affect your mental health, and it's just a cycle. And so it's cool to see this explicitly called out.
It sort of requires us to re-examine what discrimination itself looks like. A lot of people understand discrimination as having a slur yelled at you, being treated differently in a space, all that sort of stuff. Whereas we need to understand that discrimination can happen within the individual. And that is particularly common. I mean, we know that happens with, say, internalized homophobia as well for, say, gay men who haven't come out. But it's exactly the same for bi people. And we know for a fact through the Who I Am study here in Australia, the largest study on bi plus mental health in the world, that the most mentally distressed group are bi plus men in relationships with women who are not out. And that is not, they're not out. They're not out. They're not having people yell homophobic or biphobic slurs at them. It is because of their experience within them, their own selves, that they are then, what are they doing? Are they drinking their problems? We know for a fact that we have massively high rates of substance abuse within the bi plus community, higher than any other group within the LGBTIQ plus community. Are they neglecting areas of their health? Are they we know for a fact we're not coming out to our doctors. We're not having it. It is this snowball effect, and that comes down to the myth that biphobia doesn't exist, or the myth of different gender or heterosexual passing privilege. No. These things do not exist because we know for a fact through all of this data that the experiences within themselves have huge effects on their physical health.
And those things affect all communities. They just double down on the bisexual community. And so and I feel like every time I say this word, I hear people switch off. But I trust that at this point, the folks listening understand where I'm coming from, is that so much of this stress has to do with patriarchy. It has so much to do with compulsory heterosexuality and misogyny. It's like especially...
And this is where Steve chimes in and says compulsory homonormativity as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so this internalized discrimination, internalized negative self-attitude comes from contending with the expectations that are put upon men in society, in contention with a queer experience, in contention with how do I operate within a queer or non-queer space, and reckoning with, and we've had a lot of people kind of come out to us in our DMs, this kind of split attraction model of how can I reconcile my different experiences, because the only version I've been told is you got to be 100% gay, you got to be 100% straight, or I got to be 50-50. And there is just, there's a paradigm, and there's paradigms upon paradigms, right? If you think it's like a spectrum, and I'm not subscribed to the spectrum from 0 to 100, straight, gay, that kind of thing. But let's say it looks like that. And then you've got the AIB model. So there's one for each as well. So your experience is going to be your experience.
4D chess here, babe.
4D by chess. Yeah, it's cool to contend with. I love the idea of how language frames our worldview, and contending with how things and structures like patriarchy and male-centric language and all those things construct our worldview. I'm reading Judith Butler, Gender Trouble at the moment, which talks about that a lot. Language is important, and having access to language and identity and labels, they're descriptors, and they are they're ways of understanding. And I think avoiding those things can only hurt you, because there are layers of it. So you will get access to new language and you'll fuck with that for a while. And then through doing that, oh my gosh, new language, new experiences, and my world has been opened up again. And it's just, you go down this rabbit hole of like, you know what? What is gender? What is attraction? Why is attraction split by sex? You know, like it's bizarre, but it's cool to see studies like this starting to unpack these boundaries of language and experience.
I wrote something just to be self-indulgent for a moment. Something that I'm very proud of on Instagram. I had a bi quote of the day come up, and it said, being bisexual does not mean they have sexual relations with both sexes, but that they are capable of meaningful and intimate involvement with a person regardless of gender. And this is from Jane Bode in The Pressure Cooker, A View from Another Closet, Exploring Bisexuality in Women. 1976.
Yeah, wow.
Love
so cool
that it's from 1976. I put a little comment under it about bi men specifically. I know some men who would never be attracted to women. I know some men who would never be attracted to men. I don't understand these men, but that's totally fine, because we're all perfectly normal. Because it truly is something that we don't have to necessarily understand. But for us, we just have such a different experience. But then when you actually talk to people, it's often a shared and more common experience than you know.
Mm.
And of course, all of this, we've got such a diverse community, and it really layers upon each other, with bisexual women, the experiences of bisexuality and being a woman, all of those health disparities just compound on each other. Being trans or gender diverse and being bisexual, all those effects compound on each other. And we know
race,
that
ethnicity.
race, ethnicity, absolutely. It all compounds. And the commonality amongst this is that we see that bisexuality, being bisexual in itself, is a huge factor.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I want to talk about is, we're talking about kind of general physical health, and we touched on a couple of little specific things. But admittedly, in my life, I've given disability less consideration than is probably appropriate.
Yeah. Ditto.
I think most people do, right? And that is until the last 5 to 7 years. I thought I hadn't really encountered disability, and that it was much more of like an over there problem. Oh, that person over there has a disability, or that person on the TV, right? That was until a family member experienced physical trauma by way of 2 non-fault car accidents, and is now disabled, and it experiences life as someone with a disability. And I was forced to re-examine my perspective and attitudes, and just kind of my basic understanding of like just how the world works, and just how things just aren't set up. Like we don't live in a world that is set up for people experiencing disability. And I think that kind of gets to the crux of it, is disability. This isn't like a textbook definition, but my understanding of it is like disability results from the interaction between individuals with a health condition with personal and environmental factors, including negative attitudes, so an external factor, inaccessible transportation, external factor, public buildings, external, limited social support, external. So like having a health condition isn't, in my understanding, a disability. It's interfacing with a world that is not set up for you, that kind of creates a disability and creates an experience where you become othered, right? And my learning is that disability is something that affects all of us. The World Health Organization says disability is a part of being human. About 16% of the global population currently have a disability, and that is growing. And we, like most of us, I've seen numbers up to about 20, 25%. A lot of us will experience either personally or by way of relationships, disability in our own lives. So it is something that we all need to figure out sooner rather than later. And I guess an episode like this, learning about it, is part of my way of trying to check my previous blind spots and ignorance with disability.
It's interesting to look at your own experiences of disability, whether through your own experiences or through the experience of those around you. I don't know about you, Chad, but like I have experienced disability in my own life growing up. Well, I mean, I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it's quite funny. It doesn't affect me so much in my older years, but looking back when I was younger, it was really, really debilitating.
Right. Okay.
And to look at how it affected me then, and then how it continues to affect me now in ways that it meant that I couldn't pursue certain things in my life, that I was unable to do certain things in my life, that there were certain things that were inaccessible to me. It was sort of, because I'd never considered myself disabled, even though like it said like, at university I was in as a disabled person. It just never, I never clocked it. And that's because I had my own misunderstandings. It's like, oh no, like to be disabled is you have to be a certain
in a wheelchair or
way.
like have a very clear, obvious, which is again my new understanding of the last decade, is that like there are so many non-visible disabilities.
Yeah. And then also like I'd have sort of some guilt in that, like, I'm up and about and I'm generally healthy, but then it's like, oh no, then there are many days, and I'm sure a lot of listeners, people who have some form of disability, I get a lot of guilt as well. Like, oh, I shouldn't be complaining about the things that are affecting me because others have it worse off, or like I sort of like gaslight myself into, which in itself is ableist. I'm ableist against myself.
And we have created a society where productivity is our value, that we as people are judged and valued by our output. And so the guilt of living with a disability is enormous, because we are expected by others and then subsequently ourselves to do more always. And that is hard to contend with, especially because some health conditions, disabilities are fluctuating, and maybe you have some weeks where you are more productive or less productive, or to use probably more appropriate language, more able to do what is perceived to be productive versus not, right? And so then you got to contend with that. Oh, like this person said last week you were fine. What's wrong with you this week? That kind of thing. Like I know that my family member has to deal with that fucking all the time. And
totally.
But I feel like I have a hearing deficit, and I grew up with hearing aids. Didn't know for a long time, and this is kind of part and parcel of my ADHD. Is like I was always in trouble in school for not paying attention, interrupting, being loud. I'm a loud person, and
what?
and when I was like 12, we discovered I had a significant hearing loss, and so I had to wear hearing aids. And for me, I was like, cool, okay, I'm just going to wear hearing aids. But it wasn't until I got to school and I realized that my health condition, my hearing deficit, either put people out perceptively, or I was made to feel othered. I was bullied. I was beat up, all those things because of my hearing aids, that I was like, oh, I'm othered. I'm wrong here. Like I would go to school and I'd ask the teacher, hey, could you like wear this microphone? It hooks into my hearing aids, that kind of stuff. And like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like that's so inconvenient for me. What, I have to wear this every class? And like, oh fuck, I guess I just won't learn today. I'm so sorry.
Sorry that happened, Chad. That's
and
horrible.
It's and I mean my favorite thing is music. Like I'm a musician, and so like there were big challenges there, and I'm still not a great musician because I just perceptively can't pick it up very well. So I've been a musician for 20 fucking years. I'm still just a bedroom strummer, really. And I didn't realize that like, oh, this thing about me was someone else's problem apparently. And I don't wear hearing aids now. I still have a hearing deficit, though it has changed over time to a point that I can manage. It's still pretty bad. I went to an event last night and I can't fucking hear anyone if there's any background noise, and it's horrible. But ADHD as well is considered a disability, and I was filling out a form recently and it said, are you someone with a disability? And my guilt, shame, those things.
I know. I never know how to fill it out.
Like, is it a disability? I Googled it. Is ADHD a disability as it pertains to Australian government definitions? You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, well, it says yes. And I still ticked no. You know what I mean? I still felt that shame. Yeah, this is the tricky thing, is like we have learned that disability equals bad. We have learned that like disability means without, right? Disability. Then I know there's been discourse around the language around disability for years. Just that word itself, using say disabled people versus people living with a disability, or people with maybe access needs, or those types of things.
Yeah. Also, apologies. I might have used clumsy language, and this is the other thing. Is
that's
I haven't been. I need to do more work. I think what I'm learning from this conversation, Chad, is that I need to do more work on myself to understand disability within myself, within my community, those around me. I'm really noticing, the areas where I can improve.
Well, one, cool for you to say. I think that is true of all of us. One of the things, and I guess this kind of nice segue into what we're talking about next, is like the more I interface with the bisexual community, particularly advocacy bisexual community, the more I interface with folks who share with me that they live with a disability, because there is a correlation as well there. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm learning to check my language. I'm learning to to be a little bit more appropriate with these things. And so there was a study that I referenced. Again, all these studies will be in the show notes. This study is called Disability Among Lesbian, Gay, and Bisexual Adults, Disparities in Prevalence and Risk. Now, I've only got a couple of things here. I won't dig into the whole thing, but just a couple kind of headline notes is lesbian, gay, and bisexual adults showed higher prevalence of disability than did their heterosexual counterparts. We've kind of discussed it. This is kind of the theme of the month. About 25% of heterosexual women, 36% of lesbians, and 36% of bisexual women were disabled. So lesbians, bisexual women, exactly on par, which is interesting. But both significantly higher than heterosexual women. In men, it's 22% of heterosexual men, 26% of gay men, and 40% of bisexual men were disabled. That's huge.
Yeah.
So across the board, those six categories, bisexual men I don't want to say leading the race, but you know what I mean? Like how bizarre. Like I had a different expectation.
That plays out in a lot of data in a lot of different areas.
Yeah. An interesting thing is among those who were disabled or were personally with disability, the mean ages of heterosexual women, lesbians, and bisexual women were different. So the mean age for heterosexual women was 54. The mean age for lesbians was 43. And the mean age for bisexual women living with a disability was 34.
Wow.
20 years younger than their heterosexual counterparts. And 10 years younger than their lesbian counterparts. That's fascinating. Yeah. I am so intrigued by that. We don't understand causation here, right? Like this, it's not talking about causation. It does talk to things like stigma and minority stress, all those things as it pertains to like a holistic experience of worsening health. Not only are we experiencing higher disability rates, not just physical health generally, but it's also younger. Like that's in women, 20 years. What the fuck?
That's crazy.
Like that's alarming because most disabilities, actually, I don't know. Correct me, audience, please. My understanding is a lot of disabilities are persistent throughout your life. That might not always be the case, but if you are having disability younger, my understanding, again, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're experiencing it longer, right? Because you are experiencing it for a longer part of your life.
Fascinating.
Very fascinating.
Terrifying.
Tell me about it.
Now, you and I, Chad, have we're both opened up about our personal experiences around physical health, around disability. And something that our regular listeners will know as well is that we've had our own journeys around improving our health. And so, you know, we've had a really good look at these sort of macro level, community-wide statistics around the physical health of bisexual people. But let's look at ourselves as just Chad and Steve and you, dear listener, things that we can sort of do to help improve our physical health and sort of look at, I think, what's really important for everyone. And it's the thing that I start off with because, like, you know, you look at, not to sound like a complete wanker, but I'm going to sound like a complete wanker. People would look at me like, oh, wow, you're really healthy. And it's like, we were talking about this before we started recording, but you know, what I do is a sport. The sport is bodybuilding, and what we do is, in fact, not recommended to the general population. What we do is very specific. It's very monitored, and it's quite extreme. So, actually, what we do, and that sort of shows the warped perception of what health is. And so, what I tell people is like, do not look at me for what the model of health is. Do not look in the magazines or in pop culture or anywhere for what good health is. I want you to define what good health looks like for you.
Can I just say, I appreciate that, right? We have been socialized and brought up with, say, magazines and movies and TV. We see Chris Hemsworth in the Marvel movies, and he's on the front of Men's Health, right? Like Men's Health magazine as the most jacked, literally playing a god as like this pinnacle of like what we should aim to be. And I so appreciate coming from myself, someone who has lived in a fat body most of my life, and hearing from someone who is going through this experience of training for a sport to say, do not look at me for health.
Please don't.
This is an extreme experience and journey and undertaking. I love that you are explicitly saying and calling out like the blurred line between the two, because I know, and this isn't at you, but I know that it can be triggering for people to see people who are extremely ripped, vascular, all that kind of stuff, and go, oh, fuck that. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. Thank you for saying that explicitly.
Well, because, I've also lived in a larger body. I've lived as a 120 kilogram person. I've lived as a 65 kilogram adult. I've been across the spectrum, and so I have those experiences and sort of can acknowledge like there is. It's actually quite funny in that like I will look back at old photos of me and be like, oh, like I was, even when I was in a larger body, I was still quite happy because I had defined myself in that way of like, oh, this is actually what I want to be. And so I've never really had those body image issues. I've of course have body image issues, as you well know, as anyone close to me well knows. It's a daily struggle, but in that I'm very lucky in that I was taught very early on to define what good health looks like for you, and that's just what I really like to tell people. And so, despite what I do in this form of sport, there are just some absolute basics that are fairly universal in ways, and they can sound really simple. Like people will say, like, Steve, like how do you get like this? How do you get fit? And it's like I do a lot of extreme things, but it's really, really, really the basics. And my trainer, my coach, tells me off all the time because I get lost in the weeds. I'm like micro analyzing absolutely everything. And at some point in the sport that I do, you do micro analyze, but broadly, it is just the basics. It is nutrition and hydration. It is exercise and movement. Like literally, people are just like. So like there are days where I'll go to the gym twice a day, and you shouldn't go to the gym twice a day, and people tell me off. I'm like, no. The first session that I do in the morning is actually just to move. So like I'll wake up and I'll go for a walk, and I will walk to my gym, and I will actually just go and move my body. And later in the day, if I'm too tired, I have chronic fatigue, and if I'm too tired to go and work out at the gym, at least I know I've moved my body.
Yeah.
Because at the very base level, at the very base core level, movement is just the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's, for me, it's not about lifting heavy weights. If I'm able to do that in a day, then I'm doing it. But movement is really, really important.
Again, I've been a fat person most of my life, and you hear people say, move your body. You go, yeah, fuck you. But there's this hilarious trend on TikTok of people sarcastically talking about this, being like, just going for my silly little mental health walk, eating my silly little mental health salad, and kind of saying like, I hate that this actually works because I've pushed back against it for such a long time.
Yeah.
And obviously we just had a big conversation about physical health disability. Everyone's experience of movement and of these things will be entirely personal and entirely individual. And so everything that we're saying is like this, like it's for you, like, and take what you need at whatever time you need it. But yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I hate that, like getting outside, going for a walk, or like eating not junky processed foods and sugar all day, every day, and which I was doing for 20 years. I hate to admit that it kind of really worked.
It really works.
I feel better.
It really works. And it's like, I remember last year when I like started on this journey sort of thing. I hate the word journey, but I use it so much, whatever, I keep using it. It is like, I just woke up one day, I'm like, oh, I've become a walker. Oh no, I've become a walker. At least I tried a run club for 2 months. So I gave that up. I'm like, oh, I'm not a runner. I'm not a runner.
With front runners or other folks?
No, my Brat Run Club. So
Oh,
everyone,
that's right.
last year
Yes.
I started a Charlie XCX themed Brat Run
I
Club.
remember.
We lasted for 2 months, and this is the other thing is like I try new things, and
Mhm.
I figure out like, is this who I am? And I'm like, hell no. Running was awful, but I really admire anyone that does. But you know what I do love?
Mm.
Waking up just after sunrise and going for a walk. My reward halfway through the walk to get me, if I want to walk for 60 minutes, at 30 minutes, I aim for a cafe that is 30 minutes away. I
Nice.
reward myself with the most delicious skim latte, double equal, and then I
Mm.
walk back home. And like the thing is, like 10 minutes after my coffee, I'm just like, I can't be bothered anymore. But then I'm like,
Mhm.
there's only one way to get home, and that's by keeping my
Oh my
little
gosh,
trotters
yeah.
going.
Yeah. There's a circuit that I go on. I take Dallas, and it's like a 3.5K walk. And like, cool. Well, if I start, I'm kind of fucked. Like, I have to go, and it starts raining. I'm like, I guess I'm walking in the rain now.
We're walking in the rain.
Yeah. I didn't think I'd be a walk, but now I'm like, yeah, I'm walking. Maybe I'll get a weighted vest. Oh, maybe I'll get some nice shoes. Like I kind of
Yeah.
enjoy it, and I'm outside. I never get outside. I'm stuck at home working all the time. I said,
Yeah.
oh, vitamin D. Holy shit. Who'd have thunk that it actually is
Yeah.
helpful?
And literally, there's a lot of science about getting direct sunlight within
Mm.
half an hour of waking up.
Mm-hmm.
So just getting up and getting some sun on your skin and some sun in your eyes. Don't look at the sun, but literally, like, I'll take my hat off, I'll take my sunnies off, and I'll walk around, and then I'll put my hat back on. Sunset, being sun smart, and it seems so simple, but
Yeah.
it's changed my life. It's changed my life.
I think the thing that for me has made the biggest impact is it almost doesn't matter what it is. It almost doesn't matter how much. Well, it kind of doesn't, right? It is just about the consistency. So like we've talked, like I'm on a bit of a fitness journey. But yeah, so I'm kind of going hard at the gym and all that kind of stuff and eating food. But really, you could pick one thing. It could just be like every morning I wake up 20 minutes earlier and I just stretch in whatever
Yeah.
capacity that means for me. And you do that for a month, 2 months, 3 months. You're like, oh, I am feeling better. Like, man, at the end of last year, my body was hurting every
Right.
day. It took me an hour to feel normal in my body. And I say normal, it's to feel typical for me in my body. And I think it's from one, bad sleep, not exercising, not moving my body, also carrying Dallas everywhere. And so it would take me so long to feel good and stretching and a bit of yoga. And I did that consistently for a month. I'm a new person. And then all the other things I'm doing, it's like, oh, I actually wake up pretty good now. And it's weird that it was not that long ago where I was like, oh, I can't move my neck for an hour in the morning. I can't bend over or I'll pull my back. I'll be out of commission for 2 weeks. And now I'm like, oh, cool. Let's go. Let's get moving.
To give another example to people, like I over my my bodybuilding cut, which is when you lose weight and you lower your body fat percentage. I did all of that. I didn't have to run once. I didn't step on a treadmill once. Treadmills gross me out. Like, what? I don't want to stare at a wall. I don't want to be stuck in that gym any longer than I have to be.
Yeah.
I just went out for morning walks. I ate well. Make sure you get a good mix of healthy fats, good protein, and complex carbohydrates. Also, I'm not afraid to reward myself. I mean, I've been a bit of a Messina hound. If you're Australian, you'll know Messina's just really lovely ice cream, and it's like, give yourself grace as well. And the thing is, like, I don't get the guilt around my little treats because I know that I'm doing good things for myself as well. And
Yeah.
guilt's such a strong thing when it comes into physical health. And I really tell people, like, do not let guilt come in at all, because guilt is not a feeling you ever want to feel. You want to feel motivation. You want to feel good about yourself, and feeling guilty because you're not doing something or because you're doing something is not what you want to feel. Reassure yourself of the good things that you're doing, but you have to be doing, do those good things. Go for the walks. Eat well, and have that bloody ice cream.
There's something, I read a book a few years ago called Just Eat It, right? And it was, I think kids that grew up in the 90s will be familiar with this, is remember when you would eat food or eat dinner and you might not finish it, and you get told, like, you better finish it. There are people who don't have it, so you better eat it, and you get that guilt and shame around it. Or the idea of like, this is good food, this is bad food. That like say like chicken breast is good, bag of chips is bad. And so this book talks about, again, kind of this productivity mindset that we we're talking about before. We have turned our bodies and the expectations of our bodies into value producing machines, productivity, and therefore what we put into it as good and bad, we moralize. And like, and what we need to kind of bring ourselves back to is, one, stripping the idea of good and bad food. There's no such thing as good, there's no such thing as bad. It's about what makes your body feel like you are more in control, or more, you feel more comfortable in your body, and listening and learning to listen, because we've been that has been taken away from us as a skill set. You look at like our ancestors back in the day, like they ate a balanced diet because they needed to eat a balanced diet. And so relearning to listen to our bodies of like, cool, I will eat this pizza, deep fried, covered in fairy floss, right? But I'm listening to my body, and my thing is like, I would eat a pizza. Halfway through, I'd be full, but I would eat the whole thing. I'd smash a tub of ice cream, and like I would feel horrible. But I had this kind of mentality of, you got to finish it. You ordered it, like it's here, and if you don't eat it, you're a piece of shit. And so like, cool, I could go, okay, I don't feel good 3 or 4 slices in. I'm going to stop. I'm going to put it in the fridge. Maybe I'll have it tomorrow, and maybe I'll finish off the night with, I don't know, some water or something else, and then listen to my body. But I wasn't doing that. So that's why, like, again, as a parent, I'm learning to not say things are good or bad foods, that they are, all food is fuel, and there are things that fuel you in certain ways, foods that fuel you in other ways, and make you feel different things, and to listen to that instinct and develop that instinct.
Yeah, absolutely. And like sort of a more advanced level of all of this, if you're sort of at the point where you are training at the gym, or you are running, you know, deep fried foods, or like simple carbohydrates like your breads and your pizzas and all of that sort of stuff, those are actually really good fuel when you time them right. And this is something that like we learn in bodybuilding. If you've worked out really hard for an hour, your body wants to. We're getting a little scientific here, everyone. You've used up your glycogen in your muscles, and the quickest, most efficient way to actually restore glycogen is through simple carbohydrates. So it's literally, go and have a carbonara right now, because you're going to soak it up, and it's going to go straight into your muscles. And this is the thing, that there is no such thing as good or bad food. You know, we are encouraged to eat what some people would call bad food, but it's actually really good fuel at that moment. If I had it at nighttime for dinner before I go to bed, I would go to bed feeling awful. I'd wake up feeling awful, because my body has been able to process that food. Yeah. And so there are different ways that you can. Well, we're getting into more complex territory here, but you know that's just evidence that there is no such thing as good or bad food.
It sounds complex because you're getting into science, but the fundamentals of it are quite simple. It's like, cool, everything is about context, and there are things that help in some areas, things that help in others. Neither are bad, but some, again, just play into that context.
So let's do a little rapid fire. Cool. A couple of little things. So we've covered sort of the mental and emotional well-being stuff. Give yourself grace. Define what good health looks like for you. Define your goals as well, short, medium, long term. And do not look at anyone else. Do not look at anyone else. You are your own self. You're your own competition. If you thrive off a competition mindset, which I do, you know, the only person I'm competing against is myself. The only person I want to be better than is better than myself 6 months ago.
Like I mentioned in a previous episode, I used to go to church, and there's a lot of things I didn't love about it. But one phrase that I learned in the church is, comparison is the thief of joy. We are wonderful just the way we are. But the second we go, that person over there is different to me, and look at all the ways that we are different, then you go, I am lesser, or they are lesser, and it robs you of joy. So yeah, you are only ever benefited by comparing yourself with yourself, or just living in the now, and like there doesn't have to be a comparison about it at all.
There doesn't have to be, you know. And we've covered exercise and movement, so moving your body, and you will definitely find that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you move, the more you want to move. The easier it gets. you pick up a weight, that weight becomes lighter next week, and then you can pick up a heavier weight. It works. It literally works. It's how it works. It's how your body works.
Yeah.
Rest and recovery is really, really important.
Gosh. Yeah.
You gotta sleep.
Listen to your body.
You've got to rest. Listen to your body.
That's where I fail at the most.
This is something I fail at the most as well. I'm an overachiever and I push myself to extremes.
Yeah.
And no, you've got to listen to your body. And of course, preventative healthcare as well. And this is something that I take very seriously. I get I'm an obsessive blood tester. I know that what I'm putting my body through is quite extreme. And so just making sure I'm getting my blood pressure, cholesterol, everything tested a couple of times a year, just making sure that I'm keeping healthy, because if you're noticing some things are happening in your health, you're more fatigued than usual, you're reacting to certain things, there could be a really, really simple explanation, and you don't have to suffer through things. You don't have to wonder what's wrong with you. There could be really simple explanations. You could be lacking a certain vitamin, which could be fixed nutritionally or through.
I mean, this like it's bizarre to kind of come back to it, but like we've spoken about on the previous episode that like so much of these health disparities are because of lack of access or lack of education understanding. Sometimes things are just like a conversation with the health provider away, but we've not been taught or been affirmed to go to a health provider to ask something. Having a test, having a checkup, all those things can unlock something for you. For me, it was my ADHD diagnosis, and that I didn't feel comfortable going to other spaces. I found a queer-friendly psych who allowed me to go on this journey, and that has been a huge unblocker for me. And so, it's sometimes just about access.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a couple of months ago, I was really fatigued. I was really not feeling great. And got my blood tests done, and I had extremely high potassium levels. And so we just reduced some of the supplements I was on, and then everything was fine. You know, there aren't always quick fixes, but there are things that we don't have to suffer through, and that we can really be preventative or reactive in a timely way. And so those are some of Steve's little tips, for improving your physical health.
Love it. It's funny. We came into this episode going, there's so much to talk about, yet like how do we rein it in? I feel like we've kind of done both. We've reined in because there's so much more we could talk about, and then we really enjoyed expanding on those things we reined in on. So trust and belief, we'll be talking about these things and more health things in the future. This is one of the big priorities for BiPlus advocates globally, because it is urgent and there is a health crisis for the bisexual community. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Connect with us on our newsletter. We've got a sign up in the show notes. You can sign up, get updates, all those things. Social media is a great way to connect with us as well. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We are now on Threads, and we have a private Facebook group as well. It's wonderful. If you are local to Sydney, send me an email, send me a DM, whatever it might be, so you can come along to our live show happening. It's happening in June. This is a little bit of a heads up. So start of June. Yeah, we would love to see you there. It will sell out. It's a smallish venue, so you want to make sure you get in ASAP. So hit me up and I'll put you on the list.
Shout out to all my EDS babes out there. Love you all. Connect with us, and can't wait to see you all on the next episode. Thank you for listening to Give It To Me. Bye.
Love you, folks. Talk to you soon.
Mwah.